to Pay What You Can Writing Webinars by yours truly, Paul Lima. Today's webinar is how to write effectively and efficiently about any topic. I'm talking nonfiction, I'm talking any topic, any type of writing. These are Pay What You Can webinars. The recommended payment is $10. You can pay more or less. Pay what you can at www.paullima.com/PWYC. If you get nothing out of today's webinar, feel free to pay nothing. It is a Pay What You Can webinar. The workshop fee includes the PowerPoint. If you're unable to download the PowerPoint you see today, email me, paullima.com@gmail.com. Use the subject line PPT, write anything. You will receive a PDF that can be opened on almost any computing device. For more information, go to www.paullima.com/PWYC. Before we begin, a little bit about me. I've been a professional writer for over 35 years. Since 1990, I've worked as a freelance business and promotional writer and writing trainer. I've written and self-published 20 plus books, mostly on writing, but also my memoir and some other non-writing related books. You can read more about me at paullima.com. You can click on a link to look at my books if you're so inclined. So, today's workshop agenda. The writer's greatest fear, eliminate the blank page before you write, all over but the writing, before you begin, some topics on that, Prewriting Exercise 1 and 2, 2 is particularly key, benefits of outlining, absolutely key, cluster to outline, incredibly absolutely key, and then write. So what's the writer's greatest fear? What do professional writers like least about writing? And I've been a professional writer for 35 plus years. What most writers dislike is the blank page. Blank pages are sitting there waiting to be filled. And that can be intimidating. This webinar will demonstrate through prewriting exercises that eliminate the blank page before you write. Almost any professional writer will tell you what I do is I eliminate the blank page before I write. I create an outline that's comprehensive and logical. And this webinar is going to show you pre-writing work that eliminates the blank page, eliminates the writer's greatest fear, and organizes your thoughts before you write. That is the key to writing anything, getting organized before you write. Now, if you write fiction, I know a lot of fiction writers will tell you, no, I want to start with the blank page. We're talking nonfiction. We're talking eliminating the blank page before you write. In short, before you write, you want to be at that point where it is all over but the writing. And that's where this webinar will take you. It'll get you to the point where it's all over but the writing. You'll turn your outline into sentences, paragraphs, sections, chapters, whatever you need to do. But how do you get there? That's what this webinar is about. All over but the writing. Before we look at the exercises you want to do to get there, there's some things you need to know before you write. You need to know the type of document and structure of the document that you want to write. This webinar is not going to show you how to structure various documents. There are so many different types. So you need to do some research. Make sure you know the type of document, structure of the document you want to write. Something you already know or you need to learn. This webinar will demonstrate how to get down on paper everything you want to write before you begin to write. Trust me, that makes the writing much easier. I'm writing for 35 years. I would never start to write anything until I had a comprehensive logical outline in front of me. What am I doing now? I'm talking. What's in front of me? PowerPoint, point form. It's my outline. Enables me to talk about writing. If I were to write about writing, I'd have this PowerPoint or point form outline document in front of me before I wrote. Some of the types of documents you can write news articles, feature articles, profiles, editorials, opinion pieces, reports, proposals, other business documents, email, simple or complex, case studies, PowerPoint presentations, speeches, promotional copy, could be print or online, website copy, blog posts, social media, books, and so on. I can't name all the types of documents, and I'm presuming there is a particular document or maybe a couple of documents that you want to write. You need to know the structure of the document before you write or create that document. And before that, you need to eliminate the blank page, which this webinar is about. Let me take you through the 5-step writing process, just to get your head into what writing is all about. Step 1, preparation. What's your topic, your purpose, your reason for writing? I would suggest you jot that down. Define and assess your audience. Who's going to be reading? Jot that down. Determine the detail or scope required to achieve your purpose. Are we talking a couple of paragraphs, a couple of pages? Are we talking a book? You need to know how much you have to write in order to achieve your purpose. So, preparation, that's the first step in the 5-step writing process. Research. If you're a subject matter expert, your research will be internal. If you need additional information, you'll do external research. You'll probably do a combination of both internal and external research. Not what this webinar is about, though one of the exercises we do is a form of internal research to help you get everything that's inside you out of you and onto the paper. Then you want to get organized. You want to prepare a detailed outline to ensure the writing unfolds in a logical manner. Comprehensive outline, that is really key to this webinar. If you never created an outline before, you will create one after this webinar before you write anything. 35 years. Wouldn't start to write a document without an outline. Excuse me. In other words, I want to get organized before I write, all over but the writing. Then you write. You write from outline point to outline point. You expand your points into sentences, paragraphs, sections, chapters. Depends on what you're writing. So writing is simply one part of the writing process. And any professional writer will tell you they don't sit down, create an outline and write, and ta-da, they're finished. They revise. They revise to ensure the writing is as clear, concise, focused as possible, supports the purpose, and of course they check for spelling and grammar. So that is the 5-step writing process. If you try to be everything to everybody, you will be nothing to nobody. That's why you have to define your target audience or target market before you write. You target readers based on their interests, passion, philosophy, politics, and or demographics like age, gender, income. So you want to have a picture of your target reader in your head, and you want to be speaking to that reader using language that they relate to. So again, this is before you write. Think about your reader. Who will be reading your work? Why will they be reading it? What is their purpose for reading? You have a purpose for writing. They have a purpose for reading. Before you write, you want to know that. Jot it down. And if this seems like I'm giving you homework to do, I am. The more you do up front, the easier the writing becomes. so you have work to do before you actually start to write. Writing is a 5-step process. Target your audience. Think of a title or subject line for whatever you're writing. Writing a book, how to write a nonfiction book in 60 days versus rediscover the joy of creative writing. In the title, the audience is there. First one, people who write nonfiction. Second one, people who write fiction, creative writing. Excel for beginners versus advanced Excel for power users. First one, I'm talking to people who've maybe used Excel for a year or two. Second one, I'm talking to people who've used Excel for 3, 4, 5 years and they want to take it to the next level. So I have a sense of what I'm writing about and who my reader is. Europe on $25 a day versus luxury European vacations. Different writing, different readers. Traveling by train in India versus how I found enlightenment in India. So writing a title, a subject line for any document, even if you don't need to use it in your document, often you do, will help you understand who you're writing for, what you're writing about, what your purpose is. So again, before you begin to write, come up with the title. The Six-Figure Freelancer, How to Find, Price, and Manage Corporate Writing Assignments versus Business of Freelance Writing, How to Develop Article Ideas and Sell Them to Newspapers and Magazines. Well, both books are for writers. Yes, but the first one is for somebody who wants to tackle the corporate market. The second one is for somebody who wants to write for newspapers and magazines. There are similarities in that they are both writers, but we're talking different audiences. Target your audience, know who you're writing for before you begin to write. So before you write, jot down the following: your purpose or reason for writing. Why are you writing? What do you hope to achieve? Points that support your purpose, just off the top of your head. We'll do more work on this as we move into creating an outline. But what points do you have to hit to support your purpose? Conclusion, recommendations, if it's applicable. Any action you want the reader to take, if it's applicable. Jot this down. How does the reader implement your conclusion or your recommendations? What action do they take? When, where, how do they take the requested action? You, as a writer, need to know this information if you're going to convey it to the reader. It's a lot of work, and we haven't started to write yet, but the work you do up front will make the writing easier, make the writing more effective, and will actually save you time. To do all this, to write email and tweets, it's a lot of work to write a simple email or a 240-character tweet. Now I have a webinar, paulima.com/PWYC, how to become an effective and efficient email writer. It shows the W5 shortcut to write simple email messages and tweets: who, what, where, when, and why, and sometimes how. So how has a W6. So there is a shortcut, but for writing longer, complex email messages or tweets, follow the full writing process. In fact, I suggest you follow it even for simple email messages. It really helps you become more effective and efficient. The more you follow it, the less you will need to follow the full process for simple writing. And if you want to see the W5 shortcut, go to paulima.com, PWYC, and watch how to become an effective and efficient email writer. But the process is applicable to any writing. So, our pre-writing exercises. Number one, not really specifically related to what we're trying to do. It's called free fall, undirected free fall, stream of consciousness. But what I want you to do is write without editing. As I'm talking to you, you can't help it. Words and thoughts are going through your head. And I simply want you to tap into that and jot them down. Don't edit, don't revise, just write, write, write. Free fall, like you're falling before you open your parachute. Stream of consciousness. Now you can do it now or you can do it after the webinar. If you can pause the webinar, take 5 minutes and write an undirected stream of consciousness or free fall, 5-10 minutes, and just see where you go. We'll come back to this as we get through the webinar. But if you can, pause and free fall. Welcome back. I now want to show you another free fall exercise. This is called directed. It's stream of consciousness with an opening line. And this is something you will use. We will come back and talk about this once you have your outline, but I want you to experience it. I'm going to give you a couple of opening lines. Again, if you can, pause the webinar and just go. Write without editing. Editing is the final part of the process, so I want you to get used to writing without editing. And in this case, I'm giving you an opening line. So if you're ready, I'll show you the opening line, pause the webinar and write it. Otherwise, do this at the end of the webinar. I want you to experience these writing techniques. Directed free fall, opening line. Jot down. I looked out the window and thought. And go. I don't care how coherent, incoherent it is. Just go from there. I looked out the window and thought. Free fall for 5 minutes. Welcome back. Here's your next free fall line. Boiling Fred's hat in the pasta sauce, Mary thought. And go. You got 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Boiling Fred's hat in the pasta sauce, Mary thought. Free fall, do not edit your work. Welcome back. Those of you who paused the webinar and did the free fall, I hope you enjoyed it. You will see we'll come back to the directed free fall and apply that to your writing. But again, the purpose was to get you writing without editing, to separate your writer from your editor. We're now going to move on to Prewriting Exercise II, and this exercise is crucial. Clustering. It's a right brain exercise that helps you put down on paper everything you associate with the topic. Eliminate the blank page. Put down on paper everything you associate with the topic. It will spark themes, ideas, topics related to your subject matter that you might not have consciously thought of. And it will help you to create a detailed outline before you write. The technique is called clustering. So how do you do it? Jot down a keyword or phrase in the middle of a blank page, and I'll give you a couple so you have something to practice with. Underline it and circle it. Draw a long dash from the keyword. Jot down the first word or phrase that comes to mind. Circle that word or phrase. Draw a dash from that word or phrase. Jot down the next word or phrase that comes to mind. Circle it. Repeat until you come to the end of the cluster string of associated words, and then return to your keyword. Return to your keyword and you repeat the process. Carry on returning to your keyword and brainstorming until you fill the page. Now I know a picture is worth 1,000 words. Even though I'm a writer, let me show you a picture so you understand what clustering is. This is a cluster of the keyword clustering. So notice how I've circled and underlined it to get me focused. And as you can see, now we do these one at a time. Clustering, word association, brainstorming, mind mapping, treasure hunt, pieces of 8. Well, if I'm writing about clustering, I probably won't use pieces of 8 in my document, but I might use treasure hunt, but I might not have consciously thought of calling clustering a treasure hunt. So clustering gets you thinking about things you might not have thought about. Plus, it helps you put down on paper stuff you want to write about. I want to call clustering word association. I want to call it brainstorming and mind mapping. Clustering. grapes, Don Cherry, stream of consciousness, free fall, writing without a parachute. Don Cherry, now fired from Hockey Night in Canada, speaks without thinking, i.e. stream of consciousness, which is free fall. So by clustering, I actually came up with a workshop name called Writing Without a Parachute. So you never know where your clustering will take you. Clustering is a pre-writing exercise, helps you develop ideas, information, chunks of data. Chunking is outlining. How do you eat an apple? One bite at a time. So if I'm looking for an analogy to talk about what clustering is, I have developed one. Before I clustered clustering, I didn't have one bite at a time. I didn't have the question, how do you eat an apple? So it helps supplement what you know about your topic because it helps you reach deep inside and come up with themes, ideas, words, phrases that you can use. So this is a picture with 1,000 words of a cluster of the word clustering. So what I want you to do is cluster. Here's your first word. Again, if you can pause the webinar, do so. Take 5 or 10 minutes and cluster the word apple. Circle it, underline it, see what you come up with. We don't have a writing assignment. Well, I just want you to experience clustering. So go ahead, cluster apple. Welcome back. I want you to cluster another word. And for anybody who may be looking for a job and needs to write their resume, this is a great word to cluster. If you want to write your autobiography or memoir, again, a great word to cluster. The word is me. That's me as in you, not me, the presenter here. So take 5 or 10 minutes, cluster me, see where it takes you. Again, I just want you to experience clustering. We're not writing anything. Pause the webinar if you can and cluster me. Welcome back. Final clustering exercise. Come up with a keyword or phrase that represents the topic, the subject, the idea you want to write about, and cluster it. So there's something that you want to write about. I want you to experience the clustering of that topic, subject, idea, word, or phrase. So take 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever, and cluster a keyword that represents something you want to write about. Again, if you can, pause the webinar, do the exercise. Cluster your keyword or phrase that represents something you want to write about. Welcome back. Here's an extension of Prewriting Exercise II. The longer and more complex the document, the more time you spend clustering keywords or phrases that represent your topic, subject, idea. You may even cluster important subtopics. In other words, if you want to write about topic A and you cluster topic A and you come up with a topic that seems crucial, move that new topic to its own cluster sheet and cluster it. I'll talk a little bit about what you do if you're writing a book in a few minutes. So the longer and more complex your document, the more time you spend on clustering. The more clusters you do. You cluster your main topic, you cluster subtopics. Your goal is to write down everything you associate with your topic. Now, if you're clustering effectively, brainstorming, clustering freely, you will come up with stuff that you won't use. That's absolutely fine. I'm not going to pretend to know how the brain works. All I know is sometimes you have to write down gibberish in order to come up with gold. So the longer and more complex the document, the more time you spend clustering. Your goal is to get down on paper all relevant information that you associate with your topic before you begin to write. I mean, what's the alternative? Hold it all in your head and try to fill the blank page with everything you need to say, right? In a disorganized, illogical manner. miss or forget points you need to make, and also miss points that you don't know you want to make because they're buried in your subconscious. Clustering will help you reach those points. Get down on paper everything you associate with your topic before you write. The alternative is to face the blank page. And as we know, that's the writer's greatest fear. It intimidates writers. It keeps people who are not professional writers from writing. They look at the blank page and they go, holy cow, I can't fill that. You fill it with clustering. Review the clusters of the keyword that represent your topic. As I said, not every cluster string will be relevant to your topic. Many will be relevant, some will be discarded. That's the nature of brainstorming. So you cluster extensively, you review your cluster. Some of the stuff you don't need, most of the stuff you need. Based on the document you want to write, what you do is you pull the words and phrases from your cluster, dig deeper by clustering them if it's important. If a word or phrase is like, wow, I could see writing several pages, a chapter, a full section on that, you cluster it. So you've got a lot of clustering. You may have 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 sheets of paper in front of you with clusters depending on the scope of your document. You review all your cluster work and you move from right brain, clustering is a right brain exercise, to a left brain one. What you do is you create a rough outline by putting the points you want to write about in the order you should address them. So you take all that cluster material, take a highlighter, if that you find that useful, highlight all the words or phrases you think, yes, I need to write about that, and that. And you put that, open a computer file, put those words and phrases down in the order you think you should address them. What you're going to do is convert your cluster to an outline. So you've got your subject line, title of your report, the name of your book, the title of your book, and what you want to do is jot down major point 1 from your cluster. And the cluster string may have had subpoint 1, may have had secondary point A and B, tertiary point 1 and 2, secondary point C, tertiary point 1, 2, 3. Then you had subpoint 2 under your major point. Your major point 2, subpoint 1, secondary point, tertiary point, subpoint 2. So you literally create an outline. You can do it as I have done here, except not side by side, but just flow down the page using these points. As you see here, a point, your major point, a point, subpoint, secondary point with the indents and all of that. The key is to create a detailed outline that contains every point you need to write about. You want to get to the point where it's all over but the writing. Should you cluster for a 240 character tweet? My answer is simple, yes. You see, I presume you're going to be sending out more than one tweet per topic, or you're going to tweet about several topics. Clustering will help you discover dozens of tweet ideas per topic and will help you write each tweet. So it's brainstorming, it's digging deep. You cluster whatever you want to tweet about. Next thing you know, through your clustering, you have discovered a dozen or more tweets pertain to the idea per topic. And you've got all these ideas and you've got information on each one, which will help you write your tweet. In short, let's look at the benefits of outlining. You want to create a detailed outline. It will provide logical structure and give you a detailed roadmap from A to Z. So from beginning to end, you've got an outline, just like this PowerPoint presentation. Logical roadmap. I know what I need to talk about, what I need to write about. It will ensure all the major and minor, major points, Subpoint 1, secondary point, tertiary point are covered. And that produces greater clarity and focus. It also helps you detect errors in logic. For instance, I can review my PowerPoint presentation. In fact, I have many times. Before I speak about it, I can move points around so I can make them more logical. I can make sure that my talk will be clearer and more focused. It removes the stress of trying to hold on to all you know while writing. In other words, it allows you to write quickly in manageable chunks. And let's say you want to take a break. I could pause this right now, take a break, go for a drink of water or whatever. I don't lose my train of thought because when I come back after the break, after lunch, the next day, whatever, the outline is in front of me. And hey, if you have to get something approved before you write, send a detailed, logical, organized outline to your manager and say, this is what I'm going to write about. Easier for your manager to move outline points around and say, hey, I like this, but what about this point? So add a point. I like this, but I think this point should come earlier. This should come later. Delete that point. Suddenly you're writing to an approved outline. Will your manager tinker with the final document? Sure. It's all subjective. Manager has to feel like they're earning their income, but you will be writing from an approved document. And if you don't have a manager, you review your outline and you approve it. So before you begin to write your document, you're still writing from an approved outline. So you review your outline and cluster any points that require additional detail. So sometimes putting an outline together, you realize, wow, this point's really important, but I've got no subpoints. Let me cluster it. If necessary, you conduct additional external research. This point's really important. I don't know enough about it. I have to go do some reading, interview somebody, gather more information, and then work it into my outline or cluster again. You review additional clusters that you may do. So you've got your preliminary outline, you do a little more clustering, a little more external research, and you incorporate the new points into your outline. If you're writing a book, your post-cluster goal would be to create a table of contents, and then you cluster each chapter in your table of contents. But let me show you. I have a book called Tell Your Story, How to Write Memoirs and Autobiographies. Here you see the table of contents. So through my clustering, I came up with the table of contents. And then I clustered each chapter. Memory versus autobiography, the writing process before you start, structure of, initial story research, what is a book, prewriting exercises, blah, 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 blah. I clustered each chapter and came up with all the points I needed for each chapter. Writing a long report, it will be divided into a number of sections. Your clustering will help you come up with the sections. Then you cluster each section and create a detailed outline for each section. I'm organized. I feel my book is logical. I'm ready to write. I have a memoir called The Accidental Writer. Same process. Clustered the heck out of me, came up with a table of contents. Now, I don't expect these points to mean anything to you. Boring boy, give a shout, but they mean something to me. Beyond button-sucking eggheads of 404, me, an editor, accidental trainer, accidental dad, accidental dog lover, points 15, 16, 17, MS and me, I have multiple sclerosis, dust bunnies, amusing myself. All of these points became my table of content, and then I clustered the heck out of each point and came out with an outline for each chapter in my memoir. All of that before I started to write. And then I wrote from point to point to point. I didn't start to write until it was all over, but the writing. I wrote from outline point to outline point using directed freefall. So I had an opening line for each point I wanted to make. That was the opening line, directed freefall. I did that until I completed a first draft in books of each chapter. In shorter documents, I've been a professional writer, as I said, for 35 years. I've written a lot of short documents. I freefall until I complete the first draft of my document. In other words, I produce sentences, paragraphs, sections based on my outline. I get that first draft done and then I edit. Now, I know some of you can't help but edit, so just don't edit as you write. If you're writing a report, at least complete the writing of a section of a report or a chapter of your book before you edit. Do not edit until you have completed your first draft, first section, first chapter. And even then, try to avoid editing until you've completed the full document. So with your outline, you get to the point where it's all over but the writing. But suddenly the writing is so much easier. You've got a series of points that make up your document, make up your sections, make up your chapters, and you write from point to point to point. Each point is like the opening line of a directed freefall, and you complete the first draft of your document. Now, this is not a how to write webinar, even though I believe following this process, you'll be able to write anything. How each person writes is different in terms of content, structure, and style based on the document, the topic, and the target audience. So I can't tell you how to write your sentences, what style to use, how to structure your document. I don't even know what you're writing. So what each person is going to write will be different based on content, structure, style, document type, topic, target audience. But please allow me to say this. The more detailed your outline, the more logical the flow of the outline, the easier it will be to write your document. Why? Because it's all over but the writing. You've got this comprehensive, detailed, logical outline in front of you, and you write from point to point. In other words, as every professional writer knows, you want your outline to be so comprehensive and detailed that it takes you to the point where it is all over but the writing. And the writing will be so much easier. The blank page will have disappeared. You will have your book in front of you. You will have your report in front of you. You will have your 1 or 2 page document in front of you. You simply write from point to point to point until you've finished your first draft. All over but the writing. That's where you want to be before you start to write. Why hold back on the editing? Editing is part of the writing process. You don't want to edit as you write because that interferes with your writing concentration and the flow of your writing. You follow your outline and write until you complete the first draft of your document, and then edit. I'm not saying don't edit. I'm saying edit when it's appropriate. After you have done your writing, then you edit the first draft of your document. You edit, you proofread, you send. You might edit your document a couple times. That's fine. Any writer will tell you, yes, I edit that article 3 or 4 times. I edited my book 4 or 5 times. So editing is an important part of the writing process, but it's the last part. You proofread your document to correct any spelling or grammatical errors. You send or publish your finished document. If it's a long document, if it's critical that it be error-free, perhaps you actually hire an editor to do the final proofreading. Can't hurt, can help a whole lot. So pre-writing work, outline, write, and then edit. That is how to write any document. If you're interested in my books on writing various documents and my memoir and other books, go to paullima.com/books. I'm not going to read all the names of my books to you. If you're interested in the business of freelance writing, there are books on that. If you're interested in writing various documents, there are books on that. As you can see, a lot of books. As I said, I've written 22 books. Even a book of fiction, Rebel in the Backseat, and other short stories. So if you want to read my fiction, go to paullima.com/books. You can read about the various books. You can order print, EPUB, Kindle, or PDF of almost every book that I've written. So if you receive value from today's webinar, the suggested, emphasis on suggested, workshop fee is $10. If the workshop did not meet your expectations, or if it's a matter of paying or eating, feel free to pay what you can or not pay anything at all if the workshop did not meet your expectations. How to pay? Go to paullima.com/PWYC, and you will see that you can pay by credit card, or e-Interact. All the information is on my website, paullima.com/PWYC. Again, the workshop fee includes the PowerPoint. If you're not able to download this PowerPoint, email paullima.com@gmail.com, subject line PPT, write anything, and I will be happy to send you a PDF file that you can open on almost any device. That has been how to write effectively and efficiently about any topic. I hope it helps make you a more effective and efficient and better, stronger writer. Thank you for listening. Take care.